The world is hurtling at incredible speed toward a new, major war in the Middle East, a conflict that threatens not only to destabilize the already fragile regional balance, but also to significantly alter the entire global geopolitical landscape. This potential escalation carries profound implications. It could trigger a series of dangerous chain reactions, dramatically increasing the risk of a broader global conflict. Risks that have only intensified since Donald Trump assumed the presidency of the United States. Today, in an atmosphere of growing urgency and anxiety, Trump is convening an emergency meeting with the top brass of the US military leadership. Behind closed doors, generals and national security officials are likely assessing the rapidly deteriorating situation, calculating the possible consequences of every step. The US State Department has already confirmed the evacuation of its embassy in Iraq, which is often a harbinger of an imminent security crisis. Moreover, other American diplomatic missions across the Middle East are being partially evacuated as well. Simultaneously, enhanced security protocols are being implemented at American military bases across the region, signaling that the administration is bracing for the possibility of direct confrontation or retaliation. So, what exactly is happening behind the scenes? The negotiation process between the United States and Iran, touted just months ago by the Trump administration as a breakthrough initiative, has collapsed, and this outcome was, in truth, entirely predictable. President Trump, who had proudly proclaimed the unprecedented success of these talks, including curiously in his conversations with Vladimir Putin, now avoids specifics and simply repeats vague claims that something happened with the Iranians. But the reality is far simpler and more concerning. Nothing surprising happened. From the very outset, Iran had no intention of agreeing to Trump's terms, which would have entirely eliminated its ability to enrich uranium, a core component in the development of nuclear weapons. Tehran, acutely aware of the strategic importance of nuclear capability as both a deterrent and bargaining chip, never intended to concede on such a fundamental issue. And now, Iran has come perilously close to achieving that capability. This was not some media speculation or rumor. It was publicly acknowledged during a US congressional hearing by Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, who confirmed that Iran is nearing the threshold of becoming a nuclear power. This development underscores a profound diplomatic failure. Despite deploying his trusted confidant, Steve Witkoff, as a special envoy to lead the negotiations, Trump was unable to extract any meaningful concessions. In fact, not only did Witkoff fail to secure an agreement, but every domain he was entrusted with, from arms control to Middle Eastern diplomacy, ended in similar disappointment. These failures now raise a pressing question for the international community. How can Iran be stopped from continuing its nuclear ambitions? In a move that reflects both desperation and geopolitical naivety, Trump sought help from Russian President Vladimir Putin. This decision reveals just how limited Trump's options have become and how much he misunderstands Putin's motivations. Their last phone conversation, interestingly, had nothing to do with the war in Ukraine, a conflict that continues to cost thousands of lives and destabilize Eastern Europe. In fact, Trump appeared largely disinterested in Ukraine altogether. His main concern during that call, according to insider reports, was whether Putin could serve as a mediator between the US and Iran. But this expectation was fundamentally flawed. First, Putin does not possess meaningful leverage over Iran's supreme leader, Ali Hosseini Khamenei. Second, and more critically, Putin has no interest in acting as a neutral peacemaker. On the contrary, the Kremlin views escalating conflict in the Middle East as a strategic opportunity. From Moscow's perspective, if the United States becomes entangled in a protracted regional war, it will be distracted and overextended, giving Russia greater freedom to act across the post-Soviet space and in Europe. In short, the Kremlin welcomes chaos in the Middle East because it serves its broader goals, weakening US influence, dividing the West, and increasing pressure on countries like Ukraine, Moldova, and even NATO's eastern flank. We are now witnessing a tipping point. Israel, faced with intelligence indicating Iran's rapidly advancing nuclear capabilities, is reportedly preparing for preemptive strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities. Such an operation would be fraught with risk. Not only is it unclear whether Israel has a complete and accurate picture of Iran's underground nuclear infrastructure, but the potential consequences of such strikes are also deeply troubling. What happens the day after? there is a very real scenario in which Russia steps in to assist Iran in rebuilding its nuclear program, perhaps even more rapidly than before. Some analysts believe Moscow could transfer technical expertise or material support to Tehran within mere months of an Israeli attack, thus nullifying its effects and entrenching a dangerous new alliance structure in the region. Meanwhile, Iran has already issued stark warnings. If it is attacked by Israel, it will retaliate, not only against Israeli targets, but against American military installations throughout the Middle East, which it considers complicit. The logic is straightforward. Without US backing, Israel would not dare launch such a bold operation. Therefore, in Iran's eyes, the US is not a bystander. It is a direct party to the aggression. And here lies the most dangerous fork in the road. Should Iran follow through on this threat, the United States would be forced to make a fateful decision. If it does not respond militarily, it risks losing credibility as the global leader and security guarantor of the Western world. But if it does respond, if it launches airstrikes or even boots-on-the-ground operations, it risks igniting a regional inferno and possibly even drawing in Iran's powerful allies, namely Russia and China. That would mark the beginning of a truly global war, the likes of which we have not seen in generations. This is the dark scenario that Donald Trump now faces, a scenario largely of his own making, brought about by miscalculations, overconfidence, and a lack of diplomatic foresight. And while the world edges closer to this abyss, attention is being pulled away from the ongoing Russian war against Ukraine. A full-scale Middle Eastern war could once again push Ukraine out of the headlines, just as it happened after October 7, 2023, when Hamas launched a large-scale attack on Israel. Back then, international focus shifted almost overnight. Now, if a major war erupts, featuring air raids on Tehran, missile strikes on Haifa, or US bases in Qatar and Bahrain, or even cyber attacks targeting European infrastructure, the global media and policy community will turn their attention away from Eastern Europe. Such a shift would have profound implications. Not only would it hamper coordinated Western aid to Ukraine, but it could also create divisions among NATO and EU allies, particularly if the United States and Europe disagree on how to manage or de-escalate the situation. The West's unity, already tested by years of war and inflation, could splinter under the pressure of conflicting priorities and public fatigue. We are no longer in an era of predictable diplomacy. These are the war-torn 20s, and the return of Donald Trump to the White House, far from restoring order, might instead serve as the catalyst for a new global catastrophe. Subscribe to the channel, friends, to stay up to date with the latest events. This material was prepared by Hustler. See you soon.